I had taken a job as a night security guard at an old manufacturing plant, a sprawling structure with high ceilings and a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors. The place had seen better days, but the pay was decent, and the night shifts meant I could pursue my studies during the day. Little did I know that this job would become a nightmare that haunted my every waking moment. The first few nights were uneventful. I patrolled the vast expanse of the building, checking in on the occasional rusted machine that echoed eerily in the stillness. I grew accustomed to the rhythmic tick of the clock on the wall, the only company in the solitude. I took comfort in the mundane routine of locking doors and verifying security systems. It was quiet, and I enjoyed the solitude. But then the disturbances began. On a particularly cold November night, I noticed something odd during my rounds. As I approached the far side of the warehouse, I heard faint whispers. I paused, straining to make sense of the words that seemed to drift through the air. "Help us!" The voice was soft, almost a sigh, and it sent a chill down my spine. I shook my head, attributing it to my imagination, and continued my patrol. Hours later, I found myself in the security office, monitoring the camera feeds. The glow of the monitors illuminated the shadows in the room, creating an uneasy atmosphere. A flicker on one of the screens caught my attention, an area in the corner of the factory where machinery lay dormant. The image showed a figure, barely discernible, moving behind the heavy equipment. My heart raced. Was it an intruder? I grabbed the radio, my hands trembling as I attempted to contact the local police. "There's someone in the warehouse," I reported, trying to keep my voice steady. "Are you sure?" the dispatcher replied, skepticism lacing their tone. "Yes, I saw them on the cameras." They assured me help was on the way, but as I waited, the figure vanished, swallowed by the shadows. I replayed the footage over and over, desperately trying to find where it had gone. Nothing. The area was empty now, a haunting void. As the minutes dragged on, the silence became unbearable. I could feel an invisible weight pressing down on me, urging me to leave. I stood up, pacing the small office, but the whisper returned, louder this time, echoing in my ears. "Help us! Help us!" I pressed my palms against my ears, trying to drown it out. Was it the wind? My mind playing tricks on me? The police arrived, lights flashing through the grimy windows, cutting through the darkness like a beacon. I explained the situation, but they found nothing amiss. "Just a raccoon or something?" One officer shrugged, their tone dismissive. I forced a laugh, trying to ease my nerves, but as they left, I felt a growing sense of dread. I resumed my rounds, half expecting to see the figure again. This time, I was more cautious, my heart pounding as I moved through the darkened aisles. The air felt thicker, charged with an energy I couldn't explain. It was around 3 a.m. when I caught sight of something, movement just beyond the reach of the dim emergency lights. I stopped, squinting into the darkness. The shape was more defined now, a shadowy figure standing still, watching me. I couldn't make out its features, but I felt its gaze like ice on my skin. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering. No response, just silence, stretching out like a taut wire ready to snap. I backed away slowly, not wanting to turn my back on the unknown. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen in place. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the building, the sound reverberating off the walls. I jumped and instinctively turned to where the noise had come from. A door had swung open, the heavy metal clanging against the frame. I darted toward it, but when I reached the doorway, the hallway beyond was empty, as though nothing had happened. The whispers returned, more insistent now, mingling with the sound of my rapid breathing. "Help us!" Felt like they were coming from all around me. My heart raced as I stumbled backward, almost falling into the darkened corner of the office. The night dragged on, I could feel the atmosphere shift, a tangible presence lurking just out of sight. I tried to focus on the cameras, but each feed displayed only the familiar emptiness. It was as if whatever haunted this place knew how to avoid the lenses. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths to steady my nerves, but the whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Help us! Help us!" Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my radio and yelled, "I need backup! Something is wrong here." But all I got was static in response. The connection had cut out. I was alone. The minutes crawled by, and when I looked back at the monitors, my blood ran cold. The figure was there again, standing in front of the office door, staring at me. Its face was obscured, but I felt its eyes boring into me. I scrambled for the door, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the lock. And then it spoke, a voice like shattered glass. "Help us!" I bolted from the office, heart pounding in my chest, running into the depths of the factory. The hallways twisted and turned like a maze, and no matter how far I ran, the whispers followed, growing louder, echoing off the cold concrete. The building itself seemed to be alive, shifting around me as I searched for an exit. But there was no escape. The walls closed in, and the shadows swallowed the light. I stumbled into a wide-open space filled with rusted machinery, my breath coming in desperate gasps. The figure stood at the far end, waiting, silent but beckoning. I knew I should run, but I felt drawn to it, an inexplicable compulsion to understand what it wanted. I took a step forward, and the whispers intensified, swirling around me like a tempest. "Help us! Help us!" Then everything fell silent. I stood in the void, the figure now just a flicker in the corner of my vision. I blinked, and when I opened my eyes, it was gone. The machinery groaned as if awakening from a long slumber, and the air was thick with anticipation. I backed away, heart racing, and fled through the hallways, feeling the air grow colder with every step. The exit was near. I could see the sliver of moonlight spilling in through the door. I burst outside, the chill of the night hitting me like a wave. I turned back to the building, my heart pounding in my chest. But even as I stood there, the whispers returned, this time more insistent. "Help us!" I stumbled backward, knowing deep down that whatever had haunted that place wouldn't let me go. I turned and ran, not looking back, but as I reached my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left something behind, something that might never let me escape. To this day, I still hear those whispers in my dreams, calling me back to the factory. I don't know who or what was trapped inside those walls, but I know I can never truly be free of them. The haunting continues, lingering like an unanswered question, a dark promise that one day, they might come for me again. I never imagined that a part-time job at a local hardware store would lead me down such a dark path. I had taken the position in the pro department because it offered flexible hours that fit my class schedule. The store was a modest one, nestled at the edge of town, and during the day, it buzzed with activity. However, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the fluorescent lights flickered on, the atmosphere changed dramatically. I usually closed up shop with a coworker named Lisa. Lisa was an easygoing person, always ready with a smile, and had a way of making customers feel at ease. Her kindness attracted attention from various contractors who came in for supplies. Most of them were harmless, though I could see it made her uncomfortable when some of them crossed the line. One evening, while restocking shelves, she confided in me about a particularly persistent customer who had been flirting with her all week. "I've told him I'm not interested," she sighed, her hands busy organizing screws. "But he just doesn't get it. It's so exhausting." I assured her that it was likely just harmless attention. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, I began to notice that this man, whom I'll refer to as Jake, was becoming increasingly brazen. He would linger around the store, finding any excuse to approach Lisa, making her feel cornered and uneasy. She insisted she didn't want to confront him about it, fearing it would only make things worse. One fateful night, as we were closing the store, I felt a strange sense of foreboding in the air. Lisa was at the register finishing up with a customer when I stepped outside to take out the trash. The parking lot was drenched in the glow of the streetlights, and the wind whispered through the empty aisles of the outdoor garden section. Suddenly, I felt it, someone watching me. Turning, I scanned the area. My heart sank as I saw Jake lurking by the entrance, his gaze fixed on me. I quickly ducked inside, locking the door behind me. The store felt eerily quiet, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights amplifying the tension in the air. "Hey, did you see that guy outside?" I asked Lisa as I returned to the register, trying to mask the growing anxiety in my voice. "Jake?" she said, her eyes wide. "He's been hanging around again?" "Yeah, he's right outside." Just then, we heard a loud bang against the door. I jumped, the sound echoing like thunder in the quiet store. Jake had pressed his face against the glass, his expression twisted into a manic grin. I could see his breath fogging the glass, and panic surged through me. "Leave us alone," Lisa shouted, her voice trembling as she stepped toward the door. But instead of retreating, Jake began to pound on the glass, rattling the door with a force that made it creak. "Let me in. I just want to talk," he screamed, the edge of desperation in his voice sending shivers down my spine. "Call the manager," I urged Lisa, my mind racing as I considered our options. "We need to get help." She nodded and sprinted toward the office, but I hesitated, unable to tear my gaze from Jake. His demeanor shifted, and I could see something dangerous flicker in his eyes. "You think you can hide from me? I know what you really want." His words sent a jolt of fear through me. I was aware of his unpredictability now, of the dark intentions lurking beneath his charming facade. I was alone with him, and every instinct in my body screamed at me to escape. A few moments later, Lisa returned, clutching a metal rod we used for securing the doors. "The manager's on the way," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But Jake didn't seem to care. He was now ramming his shoulder against the door, determined to force his way in. "You're making a mistake, Lisa. You could have everything you ever wanted." His voice was a chilling mixture of anger and desperation, echoing through the empty aisles. The pounding continued, and I felt the floor beneath me tremble. With every thud, my heart raced faster. I couldn't help but glance at the security cameras mounted in the corners of the store, praying they would capture everything. But all they showed was our tiny sanctuary and the raging storm outside. Then, in an instant, the glass shattered, and Jake lunged forward, his eyes wild and frantic. Lisa swung the metal rod at him, hitting him square in the shoulder. He staggered back, but the momentary reprieve was short-lived as he recovered quickly, his expression more enraged than before. "Why are you doing this?" Lisa cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Just leave us alone." "Because you won't see how perfect we could be together," he shouted, advancing toward us again. In that moment, I understood the danger we were in, and it ignited a fire in me. "You need to go," I yelled, stepping in front of Lisa. "You're not welcome here." Jake hesitated, his wild gaze darting between us. For a brief moment, I thought he might back down. Then, as if something snapped inside him, he lunged again, a primal scream tearing from his throat. Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air, and the blue and red lights painted the store in a chaotic dance of color. Jake froze, his expression shifting from rage to disbelief. With a final, frustrated roar. He turned and fled into the night just as the police burst through the door. The officers quickly swept through the store, their presence bringing a rush of relief. They checked the security footage and took our statements, but Jake had vanished into the shadows before they could catch him. In the days that followed, the incident weighed heavily on both of us. I tried to reassure Lisa that everything was fine, but the truth was, we both felt exposed and vulnerable. The store was never the same. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of the lights reminded us of the chaos we had survived. One night, weeks later, as I closed the store alone, I heard a soft whisper in the darkness, echoing through the aisles. "Lisa?" It was barely audible, but the familiar voice sent chills down my spine. I turned, scanning the dimly lit space. "Hello? Is anyone there?" My voice trembled in the silence. The only response was the soft rustling of plastic and a distant clattering sound. I felt the hairs on my neck stand on end. Then I saw him, a shadow lingering in the corner of the store, his outline barely visible against the backdrop of shelves. I stepped back, heart racing, knowing that I might not be safe even here. I rushed to lock the doors, but as I turned around, the shadow was gone. The store was empty, but the whispers returned, filling the air with a haunting promise. "I'm not finished yet." As the last echoes faded, I realized the fear might never leave me. I stood alone in the empty store, uncertain if Jake was really gone, or if he would return to claim what he believed was his. Would the haunting of that night ever truly end? The Old Grounds Cafe was a cozy little coffee shop in the heart of my town, known for its artistic atmosphere and local performances. With vintage decor and dim lighting, it transformed into a popular venue for musicians and poets at night, drawing a lively crowd. However, in the early morning hours when the cafe was empty, the ambience shifted. That's when I found myself working the dreaded graveyard shift, which was a solitary, haunting experience. I took the late-night shifts primarily because they suited my college schedule, and it was relatively quiet, making it a good time to study. But working alone in the cafe was unsettling. My boss had advised me to keep minimal cash in the register during those hours, and I often felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something or someone unexpected. That night in late October 2020 was particularly slow. I had prepared for a busy evening but found myself alone by midnight, nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee while staring at the flickering lights above. The shadows cast by the few dim bulbs made the corners of the cafe seem alive, as if something was waiting just out of sight. A chill ran down my spine, but I shrugged it off as a product of the creeping night. As the clock ticked past 1, the silence in the cafe was broken only by the soft clink of my spoon against the cup. I was lost in thought when I noticed a figure standing outside the large front window. My heart raced. The cafe was supposed to be closed to customers at this hour. I squinted, trying to discern who it was. Just as quickly as I spotted the figure, they disappeared into the darkness. I frowned and tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light. A few minutes later, the door creaked open, causing me to jump. "Hello!" I called out, expecting a late-night customer, but no one answered. I stood up and moved towards the entrance, checking the lock. It was secure. Thinking it was just my imagination, I returned to the counter, but unease settled in my stomach. The cafe was eerily quiet now, the gentle hum of the coffee machine the only sound. I decided to distract myself and began cleaning the espresso machine, the rhythmic motions calming my nerves. Just as I was about to wipe down the counter, I heard it again, a faint tapping noise. It was coming from the back of the cafe, near the restrooms. Curiosity piqued. I grabbed a flashlight from under the counter and headed toward the source of the sound. The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating the narrow hallway leading to the restrooms. Each step felt heavier than the last as I approached the closed bathroom door. "Is anyone in there?" I called, my voice wavering slightly. Silence. I knocked gently on the door. "Hello?" Still no answer. My heart raced, and the hairs on my neck stood on end. The cafe was supposed to be empty. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I turned to leave when the door suddenly creaked open, revealing an empty restroom. I felt an inexplicable chill wash over me, as if the air had thickened. Just then, my phone buzzed in my pocket, breaking the tense silence. It was a text from my boss, reminding me about the lockup procedures and confirming I'd close on time. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the strange feeling. It was just the stress of working alone, I told myself. But when I glanced back down the hallway, I swore I saw a figure standing in the corner, just beyond the reach of my flashlight. I blinked, and the figure was gone. Feeling a mixture of dread and unease, I decided to retreat to the safety of the counter. I busied myself with arranging pastries in the display case, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the hallway. I could still hear the faint tapping sound echoing in my mind. As the hours dragged on, I kept glancing at the clock, counting down the minutes until my shift ended. I was startled when the cafe door swung open once again, this time accompanied by a gust of wind that rattled the chairs. A shadowy figure stepped inside, the dim light casting an eerie glow around them. My heart raced. I prepared to confront whoever it was. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, only stood there, shrouded in darkness. I squinted, trying to make out their features, but all I could see was a silhouette against the dim light. "Can I help you?" I asked, forcing calm into my voice. Then, without a word, the figure turned and retreated into the shadows, disappearing into the back of the cafe. Panic set in, and I rushed to lock the door, my hands shaking. I glanced toward the hallway, expecting to see someone, but it was empty. The tapping resumed, this time louder, as if someone were knocking insistently on the wall. "Stop it!" I shouted, half laughing at my own fear, hoping to chase away the shadows. The tension in the air thickened, and I felt like I was being watched. I turned back to the counter and grabbed my phone, intending to call for help, but the signal was weak, just as it had been for the past few hours. The clock struck 3, and the lights flickered violently, plunging the cafe into darkness. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I fumbled with my phone, the flashlight illuminating my trembling hands. "This isn't funny," I shouted into the void, feeling utterly alone. As the lights flickered back to life, I caught sight of the figure again, this time closer, standing at the end of the hallway, staring at me. I could see nothing but darkness where its face should be, just a void where eyes should have been. I froze, terror gripping me. "Leave!" I screamed, my voice echoing against the walls. But the figure only stood there, unmoving. I backed away slowly, searching for a way out. I made a dash for the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside, trapping me inside with the presence that felt both familiar and foreign. Then I remembered the back exit. I bolted toward the rear of the cafe, adrenaline surging as I grabbed the handle and yanked the door open. A blast of cold air hit me, and I stumbled outside, panting. The parking lot was empty and silent, the moonlight casting an otherworldly glow over everything. I ran to my car, fumbling for my keys, when I glanced back at the cafe. The window that had once felt like a safe barrier now seemed to taunt me. I caught a glimpse of the figure standing just inside, watching me with an unsettling stillness. I slammed the door shut, my heart racing. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the figure following me. But the cafe remained dark and silent behind me. The next day, I quit my job. Months passed, and the cafe changed ownership. I heard rumors of strange occurrences from friends who still worked there. Disembodied whispers, doors opening and closing on their own, and shadows flitting just out of sight. I often wondered if the presence had left with me or if it remained, waiting for the next lone night shift worker to draw near. Would the haunting ever truly end? The question lingered in my mind like a bitter taste, a reminder that some shadows never fully fade.